The Twisted Mind of Ted Bundy. He was handsome, charming, intelligent. On the outside, Ted Bundy looked like the man every parent would want their daughter to marry. But behind that smile, behind the politeness and ambition, hid a monster. One of the most prolific and sadistic killers America has ever seen. Welcome back to True Crime Stories. Tonight, we're not just telling the story of Ted Bundy's crimes. We are going to step inside the mind of a predator who fooled everyone, until his mask finally slipped. How did a promising law student become a name that still terrifies people nearly 50 years later? And how did he manage to live a double life? A respected young man by day and a merciless killer by night? Let's dive into the dark journey of Ted Bundy. Early life and background. Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. From birth, his life was tangled in lies. He grew up believing his grandparents were his parents and his mother was his older sister. Bundy would later describe feeling abandoned and unwanted. Those close to him recall early signs of something off. He was socially awkward, struggled to connect, and often stalked neighbors or peered into windows as a child. But by the time he reached adulthood, Bundy had learned to mask his insecurities. He was tall, well-spoken, and knew exactly how to charm people. He studied psychology and later law, volunteered in political campaigns, and even worked at a suicide hotline where, ironically, he saved lives. It was the perfect disguise. The pattern emerges. In January 1974, women began disappearing from around the University of Washington campus. The victims were young, attractive, with long dark hair parted in the middle. Witnesses often described a polite, well-dressed man, sometimes on crutches, sometimes with his arm in a sling, asking for help carrying books or unloading his car. Women who agreed to help him were never seen alive again. What no one knew was that Bundy had carefully crafted this ruse. He preyed on kindness, exploiting trust. His car, a beige Volkswagen Beetle, became a trap. Once the door closed, escape was nearly impossible. The horrors uncovered. Bundy's victims endured unimaginable violence. He abducted, assaulted, and murdered dozens of women, often returning to their bodies days later. He admitted to decapitating some victims and keeping their heads as trophies. These are details too gruesome to fully describe, but they reveal the depths of his depravity. Ted Bundy wasn't just a killer, he was a sadist who derived pleasure from control, pain, and dominance. The investigation. As more women vanished across Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Colorado, police were desperate for answers. They had a name: Ted. They had a description. They even had a sketch that looked remarkably like Ted Bundy. And here's the chilling part. People close to Bundy actually called the police tip line. His own girlfriend reported him. A coworker reported him. Even one of his professors raised concerns. But Bundy was polite, educated, and had no criminal record. To investigators, he just didn't fit the profile of a monster. So he slipped through the cracks, again and again. First arrest and escapes. In 1975, Bundy's luck started to run out. He was pulled over by police in Utah, who found suspicious items in his car: a crowbar, handcuffs, rope, and a ski mask. It looked less like burglary tools and more like a killer's kit. Bundy was arrested, but incredibly, he kept managing to manipulate the system. In 1977, during a hearing in Colorado, he jumped out of a courthouse library window and escaped. He was caught after 6 days, but months later, he escaped again, this time crawling through a hole in his jail cell ceiling. By the time guards realized he was gone, Ted Bundy was already on his way to Florida, and Florida would never forget his name. The Florida Rampage. On January 15, 1978, just weeks after his second escape, Bundy unleashed his most infamous attack. In the early hours of the morning, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. Within 15 minutes, he brutally assaulted 4 women, killing 2 of them in their beds. The scene was one of pure horror. And yet, Bundy didn't stop there. Weeks later, he abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, his youngest known victim. Her murder would ultimately seal his fate. The trial of the century. Ted Bundy's trial became a media circus. Cameras captured every moment, and Bundy relished the spotlight. He dismissed his attorneys and represented himself, cross-examining witnesses with a twisted sense of confidence. In one shocking moment, Bundy proposed to his girlfriend in the middle of the trial, exploiting a legal loophole in Florida where a courtroom proposal in front of a judge constituted marriage. But no amount of charm could erase the evidence. Bundy's bite marks were matched to one of his victims. Hair fibers, eyewitness testimony, and his own arrogance led the jury to convict him. In 1979, he was sentenced to death for the Chi Omega murders. In 1980, he received another death sentence for the murder of Kimberly Leach. The confessions and execution. As his execution date loomed closer, Bundy began to talk. He admitted to killing more than 30 women across 7 states. Investigators believe the real number may be far higher. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Outside, hundreds of people gathered, holding signs, cheering, even selling T-shirts that read, "Burn, Bundy, burn." The monster who had once blended in so easily was finally gone. Ted Bundy's story is more than just a tale of murder. It's a lesson in deception. He didn't look like a killer. He didn't sound like one. He weaponized trust, kindness, and appearance to get close to his victims. And that's what makes him so terrifying. Because Bundy wasn't the shadow in the alley. He was the man holding the door open, offering to help, smiling politely. So, let me ask you this. What do you think made Ted Bundy so dangerous? His intelligence, his charm, or something far darker inside of him? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story chilling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories every week.